The CNBC app. Global market news in one place. Customizable sections and personalized alerts. Stocks tracking, interactive charts and market insights all in your hands. Stay connected. Stay informed. Download the CNBC app today.
Welcome to Squawk Box. We're live from London. Here are your headlines today. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is on track to secure a narrower than forecast parliamentary majority as counting continues in the world's biggest election. The Dow slips 100 points on the first trading day of June, with US manufacturing data showing signs of contraction in the economy, while the GameStop rally resumes as Roaring Kitty takes to social media again.
Paramount and Skydance agreeing merger terms. CNBC learns potentially bringing an end to months of negotiations. And this is really interesting. Maersk, one of the biggest shipping groups in the world, on the planet, hiking its guidance for the second time in just over a month, saying it sees Red Sea tensions and strong demand driving freight rates higher throughout the year. So you will not be unaware, unless you've been living under a rock, that the world's biggest election in the world's biggest democracy, with the world's biggest population, is nearing its end after a very long run-in period. The Indian Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, is projected to win a third consecutive term in office as the country begins to count votes in its general election. Official numbers by the Indian Electoral Commission show the ruling National Democratic Alliance on course to win an overwhelming majority in Parliament, with Modi's BJP party gaining the largest number of seats. Now, the Nifty 50 has been a little bit oscillating as we've been waiting for these results to start trickling in. As you can see now, down 550 points. But I mean, before we get to Tanvir, just a couple of points. One, this is a market which I don't know if you've got a longer chart, team, if you can show, because that was this year's chart, but it shows the same story. And that is the fact that we are in record territory. So very often in these stories, you get this huge run up, the big industrial concerns really having a big rally. Those concerns such as Reliance Industries, the petrochemicals to telecoms conglomerate, that's had a very big rally in the run up as well. That's great, that chart. That really shows it. And that just shows some of the gains we've seen under Narendra Modi. And these big companies, they like what they're going to get from Narendra Modi. They like what they've had from him. Infrastructure-led economic drive, market-friendly reforms as well, and that's what they know they're going to get. And the most recent data was beautiful timing as well. The most recent GDP numbers, which you would have covered on Friday, 7.8% higher in the 3 months to March. Now, just put that in context. For many years of the last 10, 15 years, we've been comparing India as perhaps the poorer cousin of what the rally's been like in China, this economic rally. But a couple of years ago, they both started around 5%, but India has carried on growing and China has stuttered somewhat as well. So the Indians definitely getting the plaudits for being one of the two behemoths in terms of global population, but also getting the great growth.
To me, what's been interesting about this election has been the fact that we're now, a decade into Narendra Modi's leadership, and typically you get to that time frame and there's voter fatigue that kicks in. There's a real pushback against the ongoing leadership of one particular party and one particular leader. At this point in time, the markets, businesses, countries are all talking about the China Plus One strategy, and the country that's benefited from that has been India. So to have this magic time where potentially you could see disenchantment with the leadership, it's not happening. And perhaps there is a lesson here for other politicians that you saw Narendra Modi start out with what was a very protectionist type of measure back in 2014, Make in India. He changed that. That brought about enormous tweaks over the course of his tenure, where suddenly we saw these nationalist policies change and the doors start to open up to more foreign investment. And I think if you look at his campaign that he was running coming up to this election, he was trying to go with the high road, talking about his economic progress, what he's done for Hindus. But none of this was really catching any traction with voters. So he switched tactics and went down religious bias route, which of course has been somewhat controversial.
Absolutely.
But has it been enough to do the trick for him and get him re-elected? It may have done the case, right?
Well, Tanvir and Shri have been leading our excellent coverage on this as well, and I'm delighted to say the former of the two, the dynamic duo, joins us now. Tanvir, fantastic coverage so far as well. I know you've got a great guest waiting in the wings as well. Take it away.
Thanks very much for that, Steve and Karen. I was just listening to your conversation. I think you hit the right notes in terms of just highlight what is adding to Modi's popularity after 10 years being at the helm of being the Prime Minister of the world's largest democracy. And I think it's important that as of now, till it's done, it's not done. So the fight is whether he gets a super majority in his alliance or whether he gets a simple majority, which is crossing the halfway mark. And of course, we are very closely tracking the trends that are coming out on the Election Commission of India's website. And we will keep coming to you on that front. What I am picking up is that Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in his own constituency, Varanasi, has turned the tide. So from trailing, he's now leading by a big margin. And as the vote counting process continues, we will keep getting more updates on how he has fared in turf. And now what's important is that you guys highlighted about job creation and addressing the issue of unemployment in India as India moves towards more inclusive growth. What I'm hearing is that women voters have come out in droves and voted for Prime Minister Narendra Modi, especially women voters from the minority groups have actually voted in his favor. Now, this is again hearsay. This is what my sources have told me, so no confirmation on that front. The youth have also been very supportive of his policies. Remember, through the course of the last 10 years, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has claimed that he has empowered 250 million people above the poverty line, and poverty alleviation has been one of his pet topics, one of his pet policies in terms of being top of the agenda, in terms of bringing about social mobility so that people go higher up in the value chain and get better jobs. The focus has been on manufacturing. Nomura's recent report has highlighted that in that China Plus One strategy, India will emerge as a major competitor to China in being a preferred exporter to the world, in being a preferred manufacturing hub. And that will really help with job creation. I do want to highlight that just going into this voting cycle, vote counting process today, Prime Minister Modi went for a meditation retreat just 3 days ago, and during that retreat, once the retreat was over, once the meditation session was over, he penned his thoughts and spoke about how he believes that India could be a developed nation by 2047 and the plans he has to make India Vikasit Bharat. He highlighted that we need to work quickly in all four directions with speed, scale, scope and standards. Alongside manufacturing, we must also focus on quality and adhere to the mantra of zero defect, zero effect, which essentially means that he wants to make India a high quality manufacturing hub, paralleling the China model and ensuring that limited impact on essentially the byproducts of having minimal carbon footprint and also displacement of jobs with the onset of new technology like AI. So high quality manufacturing hub is what his dream for the new India is. I'm joined by Nasir Salim, who is from Flexi Capital, right here with me, to talk a little bit more about his vision for India over the next few decades. Nasir, zero defect, zero effect, saying essentially we can become a high quality manufacturing hub, and the fallout of that can be minimal in terms of the overall impact on pollution, on climate change, on the carbon footprint, as also little impact or little fallout would be seen on job displacement, which is such a big issue in India with the onset of AI.
Good morning, Tanvir. Thank you very much for having me on your show. I think, yes, the policy framework within which the Modi government has worked right from the beginning, from 14 to now 24 and 10 years, has been on, somewhat pushing the agenda of manufacturing, innovation. There is a lot of push towards infrastructure, which we've seen. And his vision, I guess, is to say that if we create infrastructure, sustainable infrastructure that will create multiplier jobs, on, it will create impact on jobs, employment will increase, and obviously the economy will start to rev up. Now, one of the key things that we've noticed over the last 1 year, I must tell you, is that if you look at the manufacturing sector, that has grown by 10%. Now, this entire story of China plus one, Tanveer, has been continuously playing out globally. And India is poised to kind of capture that now. I think policy continuity is the name, is what we're all betting on as market people who we track markets. I think the markets have been favorably giving benefit in terms of price revisions and upwards of Nifty and Sensex all throughout the last few quarters, because there is a lot of noise and work that is starting to show somewhat on the ground. I still feel there is a lot of catch up to happen, Tanveer, in terms of even employment creation.
Yeah.
But the vision to set out to say that we have to become a manufacturing and a sustainable infrastructure push that the government of the day is looking at is hopefully should continue and in the right framework.
How do you look at the market's response to the counting process, to the whole election cycle as it's played out? We are still awaiting the verdict, but I do want to get your sense in over here, Nasir, because you've had public sector banks. The largest public sector bank in India, State Bank of India, rallied 10% yesterday. A lot of infrastructure companies, Adani group of stocks were up and running in yesterday's session. The Ambani group of industries, that's something that Steve highlighted, has had a decent run. So do you think that it will really be the public sector which will be leading from the front in terms of fueling that infrastructure growth in India?
Clearly, Tanveer, if you look at just to price to earning bands, and if you compare this to the private sector companies, PSBs, public sector, basically banks and public sector undertakings otherwise, I haven't run up much. So from a price to earning perspective, there's a lot of catch up that needs to happen. Now, obviously, there is a lot of heavyweight lifting that the PSBs will do, whether it's the private sector banks, public sector banks or private sector banks, both will actually need to play in to ensure that the run up to infra push, manufacturing, all of this lies with them, right? And therefore, a lot of, in terms of price appreciation is expected to happen rather over the next few quarters. But I think the bigger question right now is, and you said about election results, I think early trends, Tanveer, fingers crossed. We had 2 or 3 rounds already. I think the second round is ongoing at the moment. We saw Prime Minister Modi trailing in the first round. Things yet to unfold. We are looking at a stable NDA-led government at the moment, the way it's looking out. And I think what is going to continue to be looking at clearly is the way execution, policy framework, and a sustainable environment with responsible infra push and manufacturing will be the narrative for the next few years.
So what are you telling investors in terms of where they can invest in India? Because I was speaking to Mark Mobius and he was like, he will go all out for power utilities in India. He will go all out for the railway sector in India as one of the priorities that Prime Minister Modi has, top of the agenda. One of his pet policies is about creating jobs within that sector. And you are looking at nationwide connectivity also being top of the agenda.
So Tanveer, clearly, as far as sectors are concerned, we are overweight. I think everyone is kind of agreeing to that and alluding to the fact that infra is going to be massive. Right, and there again, I told you it's going to be a lot of participation from the private sector and public sector, large private sector companies and public sector companies. Number 2, I think consumption, FMCG. These 2 sectors are looking very, very strong for the next few quarters because there's a massive consumption boost that India is witnessing at the moment, with aspirations rising, incomes rising. We see consumption picking up. Also, I must tell you, this year we're looking at a favorable monsoon. All predictions from the IMD and SkyMet are looking at a favorable monsoon in India, and that will play up on the consumption theory. The other quick thing I think with respect to the government is again manufacturing. We've said that repeatedly. Defense is a sector which is looking very, very attractive. Of course, it's run up a lot in terms of price to earning. And the other key point that I would want to make on your show, Tanveer, is if you look at China, India is at a 3x multiple of in terms of valuations to China, and we feel that this policy decision and quick decision making and on the ground will ensure that a lot of valuations continue to catch up as far as India is concerned, because right now we're at a 3x of China.
Sure.
And when earnings pick up, that's when they'll start to moderate a bit.
What about attracting foreign direct investment in the country? Most of the major US tech companies have presence in India. India is a big market for Netflix. India is a big market for Meta. India is a huge market for Microsoft, Google. Apple is a saying that India is part of its core strategy as it sets shop, opens more outlets here. Tesla. Elon Musk was supposed to come to India in April. He's postponed that trip. He's saying he might make a trip at the end of the year. He's talking, obviously, subsidies is a big sticking point between him and the government to set up shop. He wants a Shanghai a plant similar to Shanghai, to the Shanghai factory in India, but that's not happening because he's not getting the favorable subsidy policy that he got in China. Is that fair? Is that fair to ask? Should India extend a subsidy-based growth model to attract more foreign investment from the likes of Tesla?
Tanveer, I personally feel that we need to have a lot of fiscal prudence in place, which we've done so far brilliantly. And I think any kind of fiscal, any kind of fiscal not prudent will become a bit of a challenge as far as India is concerned, because we are at a very thin margin in terms of fiscal consolidation government. But I think the bigger point is if you look at FPI, foreign portfolio investors, or FIIs vis-a-vis domestic institutional investors, today the stock markets is far more dependent on DII, which was not the case earlier. Tanveer, if you see it maybe a decade back, a few years ago, the participation between a DII and FII was very, very divergent. Today, I must tell you, the FPI participation is reduced, which is a good thing for India. There is a lot of retail participation in the stock markets. But to answer your original question, I think we would be happy to see if India can be included, just like we've made a lot of noise around it, and we saw JP Morgan Bond Index including India in its index, which is coming in June. We will also feel very happy and favorably if the
rating agencies?
If the emerging index has India part of it, right? MSCI Emerging Index has India as part of that index, which will ensure that foreign portfolio investors remain bullish on India and remain invested for a longer period of time. I think that is something which will also make a huge difference in terms of FPI participation going forward.
I'll just wrap things up. Nazir, thank you very much for joining us. And as I hand it back to you in the studio, Steve and Karen, I think one more angle to the story is what this means, all these endeavors on the policy front, economic policy front, opening up and attracting more investment. What does that really mean for fiscal policy in general, fiscal prudence in general, fiscal deficit, which aside of growth is also an important variable that rating agencies are monitoring. So while S&P has upgraded India's outlook from stable to positive, India is still very much at BBB-, which is the lowest level of investment grade. So that begs the question on whether or not India has the economic fundamentals to get upgraded to a BBB+. Back to you guys.
Superb coverage. Thank you very much indeed for that, Tanveer. Right, for more market moving news from India, sign up for our Inside India newsletter. And just to give you some more coverage of on the world's largest election, and a surprise showing from the opposition, actually. Check out our ongoing coverage on CNBC.com.
Coming up on the show, GameStop shares surged by more than a fifth after an account believed to be linked to meme stock investor Roaring Kitty shows a major stake, putting regulators on high alert. Plus, private equity bosses head to Berlin for this year's super return. We'll be crossing live to the German capital throughout the morning to hear from the likes of Bain Capital, Goldman Sachs and Ares Management. And later on, we'll be speaking to Sweden's trade minister as the country looks to lead further EU-wide restrictions on Russian imports, but warns against cracking down too firmly on China. That interview is coming up at 9:30 CET.
Ambition to me is about doing better.
I think ambition creates a pathway.
The best advice I can give someone starting off a career is don't have a career, have lots of careers, try loads of different things.
Talk to people and put your ambition out there.
I don't feel that I've hit peak ambition because it's a learning journey.
CNBC is where ambition meets opportunity. What does living ambitiously mean to you? Hear it from our CNBC anchors, reporters and global business leaders on CNBC.com.
Mixed picture again stateside, but the opposite of a day earlier. So what we saw, the Dow actually in reverse, down 1/3%. If you look at big moving catalysts here, Caterpillar, that was one of the big movers to the downside. The other major boards in the green, so the S&P 500 up by about 1/10, and the Nasdaq actually leading the charge. So again, back to the big technology names. Investors again trading these have been making the point that the thematics are counting now as investors have question marks around monetary policy, which means that a lot of the directional trades are really still going towards AI. Nvidia, the big moving stock yesterday for the likes of the S&P and for the Nasdaq. So investors trading a very narrow handful number of stocks as they try to just tactically gear around the monetary policy story. In terms of what we saw in the semiconductors, up 1.25%. Fang Plus stocks up 1/3%. Contrast that to the banks trading down 1.2% in session. To treasuries, and this is the picture stateside on the US bonds, 4.82% at the short end. So morning session picking up slightly. We're 4.40, but we have drifted off the 4.5% mark on the 10-year. To the dollar trade, and this is how we're looking as a result. The sterling dollar poised above 128 this morning, just marching into the green. Euro dollar, we're 109 plus. As you can see, there's huge market focus on euro dollar with the ECB this Thursday. Dollar yen rate stronger though, versus being on the back foot for the greenback versus other currencies on the European side. In terms of the other Asian currencies, dollar is also stronger versus the yuan, Steve.
I'm just sending out ESP to the audience. What do you want? Do you want a robust chat from Karen and I on ISM manufacturing or GameStop? Oh, you're so obvious, you lot. GameStop. I'm quite happy to do ISM, but you want GameStop, we'll do GameStop. I'm going to do the read anyway, because the US manufacturing sector shows signs of contracting as the ISM index for May came in at 48.7 in May, below an estimate of 49.6. The weak print adds to signs of a cool down in the US economy. I was going to question that, but you guys want to do the other chat, so I'll do that. Raising investor hopes of a Fed rate cut by September. Really? Is it really raising their hopes? Okay, here's the one you wanted. Shares in GameStop, the poster child of the meme stock movement, surged once again on Monday, jumping more than 70% at one stage. Yes, at the open, before paring back to close 21% higher. This after a post on Reddit linked to investor Keith Gill, known in the community as Roaring Kitty, known as something else on his other handle as well, but I won't mention that because it's a family show. Claimed to hold 5 million shares in the company, totaling more than $115 million as of Friday's close, and making up around 2% of the company's share trading. Retail trading platform E-Trade is apparently, and I say apparently, debating whether to close Gill's account due to concerns over his influence and to potential manipulation of stock prices. Again, apparently. That's according to the Wall Street Journal. The SEC and Massachusetts Securities Division are also investigating, reported to be investigating Gill's trading activities, as well as broader options trading activity at the time of his post. Karen and I were trying to work out because we like to have a good debate, but sometimes we forget what we said in some of these debates because we're doing it for you, okay? And I've just remembered what we were debating about this one last time. And it was the fact that I said it had zip influence on the real market, the rest of the market. I said this is kind of like, like Disney World, and then you've got real Orlando outside of the confines as well. And I stick with that because I think whatever's going on in the real interest rate, economic, Nvidia-inspired real world, this is just something else going on. And I find it unbelievably fascinating. And I'll just put my flag on my mast on this one as well. As long as this chap is doing nothing illegal, I say let the sport carry on. Let it carry on because there's a lot of short stocks out there in this, a lot of lending on this one out there as well. There are short players trading it aggressively. He's obviously trading this one aggressively. If the moment he's doing anything illegal is proven, then shut them down, throw away the keys, etc. But if he's not doing anything illegal, I say let it carry on.
Well, just to remind you of my conversation points last time, I think the backdrop...
God, you've got them, have you?
No.
Do you keep all your notes?
In my brain. Yes, it's filed somewhere. I'll just get it out of the filing system. I think the backdrop matters because every time you see this type of meme stock rally, it coincides when there's been a rally in Bitcoin, it coincides when there's been a rally in tech stocks. So I think there are pieces that some of these traders, retail traders, can move around to use at their disposal to trade GameStop. So I think the landscape does matter. To the points around what we're saying, it's not Nvidia. You can see moves like this in Nvidia stock in one day. As we saw the 21% up move in session, Nvidia stock can move 26% in one day. But this is not Nvidia stock. So the moves like this are incredibly unusual. In terms of some of the commentary, I was looking at Motley Fool, and this is the line: why I wouldn't touch the stock with a barge pole. So obviously a catchy title like that, you have to read a little bit more of it.
Great phrasing. I've used it many times myself.
So the reminder here is that GameStop is not a sexy tech stock. It's a video game and collectibles
That's
retailer.
exactly what it is. It's a video game stock. And I don't just mean the underlying economics and industry of the company. It is a video game. Someone's playing a video game out there. Gil is playing a video game at the expense of the short sellers.
But even worse, the collectibles. I mean, who trades a collectible to this extent?
Some of us have got collectibles out there.
Yeah, but you don't have frenzy trading collectible. It seems it's a more genteel, quietly accumulating type of narrative, not frenzied trade, right? In terms of what the stock did before 2021, the stock was a company in decline. This is according to Motley Fool. And also going to say the stock is currently trading at 2,314 times forward earnings. 2,314 times forward earnings.
Who cares? If someone wants to buy it and is trading, what is it, 2,300? Good luck to knock your socks. If you think that you can make money out of buying something at 2,300 times forward, good luck to you. Quick word on the options as well. What is really interesting, I think you've got an options expiry. I'm pretty sure it's on the 21st of June.
Yes.
He's bought some $20 options. I can talk about this on another occasion if you like, but basically what it does is it adds stunning volatility. When you've got very, very short-dated options, they come with a premium which basically loses all its time value, and it's basically they're worth 1 or 0 at the end of the day. I.e., if it's trading above $20, they are virtually stock. If they're trading below $20, they're worth nothing as well, which adds a huge amount of volatility. Very similar to that gamma surge people were talking about last week with Nvidia. That is the only comparison I can find with the real world.
So the stock's been trading above $48 in recent weeks, to your point, but below $20 pretty much all year.
So below $20 when they expire. Up until then, they have a big what's called a delta. But when they expire, they're worth zip below $20, but they're worth $28 when they're trading at 48 if they've got a 20 expiry. Just a quick word from our viewer Thomas. He says, "No, mate. Oh, stick to the ISM, please." I think you and I are in the minority, Thomas, but lovely to hear from you this morning. Right, what's going on?
Meantime, a technical issue that caused A-class shares of Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway to appear to be down nearly 100% on the New York Stock Exchange has been resolved. For more on that, you can check out CNBC.com. Certainly a number of glitches on the street again yesterday. Thank you for listening to Squawk Box Europe Express.
For more market-moving news, you can head to CNBC.com.
Or join us again on the show with Steve Sedgwick, Karen Cho, and myself, Arabi Lekumete, weekdays on CNBC.